forgot that I had it on my computer. Since my the first time I was ever on stage, I was a junior in high school, and since that time, including spelling bee, I have either been in or directed 63 shows.
That's a lot.
Sure, just as a reference.
Oh, thank you.
The ones in red were my favorite experiences.
That's
on
awesome.
stage, and I really did like spelling bee. That was a lot of fun. So I added that as well.
That was awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. That helps.
Yeah.
So how did you first, I guess, become involved in theater?
Okay, so I was a junior in high school, and one of my best friends to this day, he and I were shooting baskets in the gym after school. And it was that window of time, like at every high school, between end of the school day and when play practice has to take over the gymnasium, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the guy directing the spring musical walked up to my friend Matt and I and said, "Hey, someone in the musical got mononucleosis and has to drop out. This is like 3 weeks before the show's to start."
Oh gosh.
And he said to me, he goes, "You want to be in the musical?" And I said, "No. You know, musicals, I'm an athlete. I mean, no, I'm not." So my friend Matt looked at me and said, "You should do it." So I'm not doing it. So we're getting in this debate with the director saying right there. And Matt said to him, "When does he have to be there?" He said, "Tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And Matt looked at me and looked at him and looked at me and said, "He'll be there." And somehow, within the next 36 hours, one of my best buddies to this day talked me into being in the musical. And I was. And I think from that point on, I was hooked. I enjoyed it, and I was kind of good at it. You don't want to. If you stink, you stink. So,
Right.
as they say, I caught the bug then. Then the next year we did West Side Story, and I was all about being involved in that.
Yeah.
And then I went to college, and I thought, Hannah, I truly thought it was done. That was something I did in high school, and then I took a class at Wilmington College. It was a freshman introduction to theater class. Freshman year? Yeah. And one of the prerequisites for the class is you had to try out for the play. And so I did, and I got a small role, and it started up again, in college. And I was never a theater major. I was an education major, and I just did theater for fun, right? Just something to do in my evenings. And then I got to my senior year, and I was doing great. I got great roles by my senior year, which kind of ticked off a few theater majors because here I was just. But that's another story for another time. And so I wasn't in the spring show my senior year because I had to do my student teaching. It was I was an ed major.
Right.
I did my student teaching and was really scared because I realized going to the same school every day, I really didn't like teaching. And I thought, oh my God, I've gone 4 years to college, and now I'm finding out I don't want to teach. So, as all that was playing out, there was an audition at the Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park, this regional theater, where they were auditioning college seniors for internships all across the country to work in professional theater. And I went down just with a couple other guys, just on a whim, and did what I do. And I don't even know if it's just, there was a theater in Norfolk, Virginia called the Virginia Stage Company, and they said, "Yeah, we'd like you to come work for us for a year." And the deal was, you'd go down there as like a intern or an apprentice or whatever you want to call it, and you'd earn the professional weeks on stage you need to become a full-blown Actors Equity, which is the Actors Union. You'd have enough time on a professional stage to earn your card, to earn your union card. So I did that. And God, this whole story's turned into my life story. Came home and decided to do a show out at Baldwin Wallace. BW used to have a summer theater called Berea Summer Theater. And there are a few people in the show who had some connection with the Cleveland Playhouse up in the city. And in those days, the Cleveland Playhouse, they don't do this anymore, but every spring and summer, they would hire a pool of actors and actresses, probably 30 or 40 people. They'd hire us all, and then from those 30 or 40, they would cast every show that they were going to do September through May of the next year. Okay. So it was like a full-time job. So I was doing a play called You Can't Take It With You at the Berea Summer Theater, and I found out that the artistic director, Richard Oberlin, was in attendance at one of the shows. And he was the man. He was the guy that did all the hiring at the Cleveland Playhouse. So, backstage before the show, everyone's coming up to each other saying, "Oh, Richard Oberlin's in the audience," that sort of thing. Hannah, this sounds like something out of a 1930s Hollywood movie, but this is what actually happened. So we did the first act of the show. It was intermission. I was back in my dressing room, just sitting there hanging out, waiting for the second act to start, and there was a knock on the door. And I looked up, and I was looking through my dressing room mirror, the reflection to the doorway. And there was this very distinguished, gray-haired, smoking a cigarette, because everyone smoked anywhere back then. Really, distinguished-looking guy. And he said, "Mark?" And I'm still looking at him through the mirror. I'm not even, I know who he is. I go, "Yeah?" He says, "Richard Oberlin, Cleveland Playhouse." I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." And I turn around my chair, and he goes, "Don't get up." He said, "Come see me next week." I went, "Oh," which meant, right? He was interested enough in me as an actor. And he stopped himself, and he said, he turned back, he was leaving, he turned back towards me, he said, "And Mark?" And by this point, I'm like hanging on to every word he says. I go, "Yes?" He goes, "Try to relax in the second act." So he must have known I knew he was there, and I was probably pushing a little bit, right, in my first act performance. Went to see Richard Oberlin, got hired by the Cleveland Playhouse, spent like 4 seasons there, and but the Playhouse jobs are, like I said, September through May. And everyone would go do summer stock or summer theater and then reunite in the fall. And I hadn't planned out my summer yet, and a buddy of mine said, "Hey, they're hiring show announcers at SeaWorld." There used to be a SeaWorld in Ohio. And I said, "Oh, I'm an actor now. I mean, I'm too good for SeaWorld." And he said, "They're paying like $25 an hour." And this is in 1987, so that's $25 an hour is a lot now. And I was like, "What?" So I went out to SeaWorld in the pouring rain, stood on a stage with a microphone, and like did all their what would be said in the show. Like this. So the script is just like it's getting soaked. I'm getting soaked. They hired me, so I spent 2 summers at SeaWorld while I was doing the Cleveland Playhouse thing through the fall, winter, and spring. But I started having, everyone says you reach that crossroad in your life where you have to make a decision what you want to do. I kind of realized I didn't have it in me to go to New York and try to make it. And I was scared I was afraid of Los Angeles. And I hadn't discussed this with anybody. I just realized that I'm an Ohio guy, and so I wasn't panicked, I wasn't worried, but I knew it was going to come time that I would have to start looking for what was next. Well, as fate would have it, one of the guys I worked with at SeaWorld's dad was doing marketing work for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And just through his sons and my relationship, going to Indians games and basketball games together in the late spring, early summer, he knew I was a sports nut. So I'm over at his house one day picking up his son. We're going to go somewhere, and just matter of fact, he says, the Cleveland Cavaliers are looking for a guy with an entertainment and a sports background. He goes, I think you'd be really good at something like that. And I said, I think I would be too. So he goes, well, here's a number. Call. Her name was Gail Bibby Cream. She's still one of my mentors who I think the world of. I met with Gail, and then I'll speed this up. I spent the next 8 years with the Cleveland Cavaliers as the director of game day entertainment, and I had to hire cheerleaders and halftime acts and anthem singers and color guards. That was all my doing. Do all the scoreboard animations. I was a busy guy. Hired a gorgeous blonde cheerleader who I ended up marrying. So that's Spencer and Hallie's mom. We're still 24 years later. But that's how Amy and I met. And so I went to Cavs. Things are going great. And our teams were really good. This was even before LeBron. This is Mark Price and Brad Doherty and Larry Nance Sr. Larry Nance Jr. plays for the team now. That shows you how long ago it was. They were the big three on our team, and we were really good. Chicago was a little better. They had this guy named Michael Jordan, but we won't get into that. But all the commercials available on our if you watch a game on TV, where we were sold out. No one else could. We couldn't get any money from sponsors because every amount of time, commercial time, was sold to somebody. So we're sitting around in this conference room, and because I never can keep my mouth shut, I said, well, we can sell more commercials if we added another show, like if we did like a pregame show for a half hour. So before the game would start, like this half hour there, which is common, they're all over the place now, where everyone sits in a studio and talks about the game and blah blah blah. So it sounds so primitive now, but this is the way these meetings went back then. Someone said, well, who knows anything about doing a TV show? And I had done a few commercials locally and stuff like that on camera, not behind the camera. And I just raised my hand and I go, what do I have to lose, right? I go, well, I do. They go, oh, well, then you'll come up with a TV show. So I did. And the show, you're not going to, this sounds so ridiculous, but the show was called Cavs Fast Break. And I hired a guy named Michael Stanley, who's a Cleveland rock and roller, to be my host because I wanted someone who wasn't like a jock or a former jock to interview players and stuff without really knowing what he was like. So he'd ask questions to these guys like, when you guys are on the road and have to go to a hotel to stay, are the beds big enough? And like questions we all would want to ask, right? But we,
right.
Instead of, hey, you're averaging 18 points a game and 5 rebounds, those are just numbers. So Cavs Fast Break was born, and we were having so much fun doing this little show and then the games and everything. I walk into work one day, and my boss, one of our vice presidents, says, congratulations. And I said, thanks. Well, why are you congratulating me? He said, that little show that you've come up with? I said, yeah. He said, it just got nominated for an Emmy Award. Now, not nationally, regionally. Our regional was like Chicago, Indianapolis, Detroit, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh.
Gotcha.
Just this little circle. And I was like, well, that's cool, right? I mean, Emmy Awards. So we won the Emmy. The next year we won the Emmy again. And the team was building a new arena up in Cleveland. We were still down Akron way at a place called the Coliseum. And I got that feeling again that it was time to make a move. So Channel 8 in Cleveland, by that time I was doing, the TV show was known, and so Channel 8 got a hold of me and said, would you ever consider coming to the television station as a full-blown television sports producer? And I thought, well, that seems like the next step, right? So I went to Fox 8, and they gave me a show to produce called the Sunday Sports Page. I won a 3rd Emmy with that show. I was like on a roll. So I had my 3rd Emmy award. There's all 3 of them up there. And like a year goes by, and I get a call from the Cavs again. And they said, what are you doing? And by this time, Amy and I are married, and our daughter is born. And we find out Spencer's on his way. I have my kids really fast, close together. Spencer and Hallie are, for 8 days, are the same age. Okay, yeah, do the math. So they said, we really don't like the people we brought in to replace you. And I found that interesting because he said people, not person. So when I left the Cavaliers the first time, they had to hire several people to do all that I was doing. That's on me. I should have asked for more money, but I didn't. So they said, would you ever consider coming back? I said, well, I'm married now. I'm a father. I don't think so. They said, well, at least come and meet with us. So I was talking to Amy, and I said, the Cavs want to talk to me about coming back to pro basketball. And she said, well, don't be rude. Take the meeting, and if when they ask you what it's going to take salary-wise, just say a number that's just way too high. Like they'll say, oh, we weren't thinking that high. Thanks for coming in, and we'd all leave on good terms. So they said, what will it take for you to come back? And I said a number, and they didn't blink, and they said, oh, great. So I kind of lowballed myself and went back to pro basketball for several years, up until the drafting of LeBron James. In fact, it is a fact that the first interview that LeBron James did as a professional athlete, he did with me. Doesn't mean much to anybody else, but it's kind of cool, right? Yeah. He couldn't have been nicer, couldn't have been more polite. And not long after that, our team owner, his name was Gordon Gund. Gordon Gund wanted to get out of owning the team. And he probably thought, which made sense, with the opening of the new arena and the drafting of LeBron James, the value of the team probably wasn't going to be as high as it was at that moment for him. So when he sold the team to Dan Gilbert started bringing in all his former associates, which was costing everybody their jobs. I'd go in one day, and the office next to me would be empty. I'd come in the next day, someone else that I had never met before was in that office, and this was going on all around me. So I kind of knew that eventually my number was going to come up, and it was going to be my turn to be shown the door. So I waited, and it did. It happened one night. They said, hey, you got a second? They called me in, and they basically told me, there's someone that Dan knows he wants to bring in to replace you. And, no hard feelings. I understood what they were doing. I kind of was upset that I was losing my job, but it didn't rock my world. I mean, I saw it coming, so. And right about that time, I started thinking, the kids were young. Hallie and Spence, they were probably like 5 or 6, something like that. They were young. And I kind of think where I wanted my next stop to be. And quite honestly, I had always thought about the college scene, the collegiate environment, and how I thought I could really do well in that setting. And but nothing was on the horizon except one of those former Cavs players who had now retired, Larry Nance Sr., reached out to me and said, I want to do a basketball camp, and I know you're really good at organizing stuff, you want to help? And I said, sure. And this is how it gets weird, like the past hasn't been. So we're doing this basketball camp. I need to find uniforms and
you can take it.
I'm still in my office. It's going to be about 15 more minutes. I'll take a picture of what I see and send it to you guys. All right, bye. So, Larry tells me he needs some help organizing this camp. And I'm working on it, and I have to order basketball uniforms. I find a company in North Canton that does that sort of thing. I start working with them. They asked me what I'm doing. I said, I'm just kind of freelancing right now, trying to find things to do. And they said, why don't you come work for us as a team consultant just because of your background in sports or whatever. I was there, didn't like it. I mean, it wasn't, I mean, working with teams and doing uniforms and gear, but it gave me somewhere, I had somewhere to go every morning, and it was fine. Well, one of their big clients was the men's basketball program at Walsh University. And I got to meet some of the guys over here, like Coach Young and so on, and Dale Howard. And after Dale found out about my background with the Cleveland Cavaliers, he said, why don't you come over to a few of our games and just take notes of what you would do differently and how you would make our game night experience better. So I was doing that, helping out a little bit here and there, and the men's basketball team went to Missouri for the national championship. And I told Dale, I said, well, why don't I organize like a watch party here? So in the Barrett, we had big screens set up, we had food, we had drinks, because the men's team was playing for they got the national championship game.
Right.
And so Dale said, he goes, call me before the game starts, or I'll call you, and I'll be interested to see how many people show up. And I said, he said, if there's 50 to 100 people there, I'll think it's a success. And when he called me, I could hardly hear. The Barrett was packed. There had to be 500 people in there. And all I remember is the game was terrific, and we lost by 1 point. So we would have had a second national championship up on the wall had we not lost by a point. But it was a huge success. I mean, the student body, the faculty, staff, everyone was there because it was the only place to see the game.
Right.
And what I didn't realize is while Dale Howard and President Jasson were out in Branson, Missouri for the tournament, they were discussing me and how to get me here. So when they came back from the tournament, Dale asked if we could meet. We met over breakfast at some little diner in downtown North Canton, and he basically offered me a job that had never existed here, a position that they had kind of figured out what it would be, and they also told me that it would evolve. As I got here, we'd find things that made more sense. So that was 8 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago. So the theater thing. So when Dale hires me, he says, it was in the summer. He says, well, these are the times we work. And I said, well, I may have to leave a little early. He said, what are you talking about? I just hired you, and you're telling me you have to leave early. I said, well, I'm in this pretty big musical up in Cleveland, and we rehearse at this, and the show opens this date, whatever. And it was the producers. There I am in the suit there, and Dale's like, and I was afraid it would be I thought it was going to be a bit of a like he didn't understand it, but he was so supportive. He goes, oh my God, he goes, I think that's great. He goes, when is it? We'll get tickets. And sure enough, he and his wife and his mother-in-law, they were all in the front row one night. It was ridiculous. And so he knew that was a part of me. He knew that was something I kind of dabbled in. And then several years after my start here, there was a woman who used to direct a fall and a spring play. And President Jasson called us in and said she was getting on in years and her health was a concern. And he said, so what we're going to do is this year, Mark's going to be your assistant, talking to this woman. Next year, you're going to be Mark's assistant. And then the following year, you'll retire and Mark will take over. And that seemed to be a good plan until I came into work probably a week later and received a phone message from Dr. Cooper that this woman had died just overnight. So I kind of got thrust into this transition that was supposed to take place really didn't. And I hadn't done a whole lot of directing, but I wasn't afraid of it. But I between you and I and the article when you're done writing it, I picked shows that I knew I could handle, that weren't too much. And over the past couple years, I've felt that I can do a little bit more. I'm not as intimidated as I would have been by a show title the first year I was going to be directing.
Right.
Yeah, I think the first couple years I did nothing but little one-act plays over in Betzler. And then they became full-grown plays. And I think 2 years ago I finally took a deep breath and did Godspell. So Godspell, Charlie Brown, and Spelling Bee were obviously those have gotten progressively bigger productions that I think I just needed to take baby steps before I learned, before I could get up and running here. So it's funny because now not only the cast members of Spelling Bee, but people like you and Alex and every time I see any of you guys now, it's like, what are we going to do next year? What's next year? What's the plan? Yeah. So it's become like a real thing. The president saw Spelling Bee on Friday, and was just thrilled. He couldn't have been happier. He said, this is the best thing you've done theatrically since you've been here, which meant a lot to me. And yeah, we'll see. I can't believe I just rambled on for What other questions could you possibly have?
We covered most of them.
Okay.
So, what is your technical job position and title on campus?
My title here is, let's see if I can remember it. Assistant Athletic Director in charge of game day operations and media relations. Okay. So, any event you come to as a student, fan, whatever, I'm responsible for pretty much everything that happens outside of the games themselves being played. For basketball, it's what we'll be doing at halftime, what the giveaways are going to be, the promotions, music played during timeouts, when the cheerleaders will run out on the floor, a lot of sponsor-related stuff. Football's kind of like the same way. Spring sports and outdoor sports are pretty much make sure the speaker's working, make sure the lights are working, and that's basically it. Make sure the referees know where they're going, make sure bathrooms are unlocked, all the things that people need to concern themselves with. Make sure people are parking in the right spots. I have a computer program that lists every venue we have, from Alumni Arena to the outdoor football fields, baseball, softball fields, soccer fields, that all coaches have to get with me to get on the grid as to when they can practice and stuff, because when I started here there wasn't any.
Wow.
So people just kind of elbow their way to get time on fields and stuff, so I coordinate all the practice schedules.
That's cool.
I oversee sports information, so making sure the website's accurate. What if there's a story that we want to get out to the local media about an individual athlete, I make sure that those efforts are being made. And yeah, so that's that's my full-time job. And then the theater thing is just it's turned out to be a little nugget, and it's especially this past so once we decided to do Spelling Bee, I got scripts and everything before Christmas break. So I gave everybody in the show their script and told them, you got a month. I'm not going to see you every month. If you're smart, you'll do everything you can to kind of digest this as much as you can and memorize. I am about memorizing stuff.
Right.
And a few of them did, a few of them didn't. But when they got back, the schedule was so hard because with that show, as you saw, everyone was on stage all the time, so it wasn't like I could do little scenes and work with a couple people. I needed everybody there all the time, which meant we were rehearsing late at night, which means I had to kind of do some nights I had to do things after basketball games, which was like a 9 o'clock start till 11. Then both our men's and women's basketball team did so well that they were in the postseason with tournament games and so on, so those days were lost. I was really respectful of people's weekends. The only time I snagged a Sunday night prior to opening on Thursday because I thought we needed that extra little time. But yeah, we did a lot together, which made me, when the show was over on Saturday, I was just kind of like, oh my God, I had been here like 17 days in a row. With athletic events and rehearsals and stuff, and I was like squirrely. I just needed to not be here one day, and so Sunday was like, I was just like a vegetable. I just sat. My wife and I had to go see my daughter in something in Dayton, and I said, "Do you mind driving?" She goes, "No." I go, "Good." And I just sat there. I was just like, just kind of wasted. But yeah, so that's what I do. That's what my job is. So I'm able to juggle all that at the same time.
Awesome.
Haven't dropped anything yet, right?
Are you still involved in like your own theater things?
Well,
outside?
I haven't done anything. I don't think I think I was surprised. In fact, I was surprised. I haven't done anything on stage since 2014, which kind of surprised me that it was that long ago. But it's been that long ago, and it's not like I haven't been busy. It's just I haven't. Also at this juncture. And every actor, you realize this too. As you get older, certain roles are no longer going to be a possibility. I mean, there's certain roles I'll never play that I had on my bucket list that I'm just going to have to let it go. So, but that's okay, because there's things that every show needs a dad or some quirky little character, and there's a couple guys out there who are always calling me saying, "Hey, what are you doing this summer?" And they went out. I don't know the show. There's a musical called Heathers. It was a movie called Heathers.
I've heard of it.
Now it's a musical, and there's a buddy of mine who I met during the producers who's directing it up in Cleveland, and he's been texting me, wanting me to go on YouTube and see what's going on. He wants to know what my summer's going to be like. So I think he's kind of wanting to know if I'm available. We'll see. Something's telling me to just kind of put my feet up for a while, but we'll see. I may listen to the music and watch a snippet on YouTube and realize, oh my God, this is a great role. It's a great show. I think I should do it. So again, I can't go there yet.
And then I feel like I have all of these questions. Okay. So what right now is keeping you at Walsh? Like, what is it that you're enjoying that is making you not move on right now?
I think it's been a great fit. It's been, and I as my rambling obviously indicated, I've done a lot. I have, and I think I've tried to instill that in my kids as well. Is that, what's the phrase? Seize the day. Just do stuff. Don't sit back. Don't watch the world go by when you could be an active member in it. And Walsh has kind of made sense for me because it's let me do the things I'm passionate about, right? I mean, I've always been the sports guy, and that's a big part of who I am. But for them to embrace, once they found out about it, the theatrical part of me, and let me kind of do some things there. I don't know anyone else who can say that. I go to work and do all the things I'm really passionate about and care about. I mean, obviously my wife and my kids are 1 and 2 and 3. There's 3 of them. But as far as the stuff that makes me happy and gets me charged up, I mean, yeah, it's been a really nice fit. I like the people here. Everyone seems to respect each other, and there isn't a whole lot of. I don't sense a whole lot of judging. Just which I think is great. In a way, I like that we don't have a theater major here, because my shows and my casts, I love the idea that the men and women who make up these shows come from all different parts of this campus.
Right.
Like, you know, we have education majors and philosophy majors and sciences and accounting who just like to be in shows, and
Right.
you know, they're not all there were all music majors in the musical. I mean, they came from all walks of life on this campus,
Right.
which is neat, because you know, I called Spencer one night after rehearsal, and you know, a group of people who probably wouldn't have any reason to be together. Well, you know what it's like to be in a show. You're suddenly forced to be together,
Right.
and you form this bond, this friendship. I called him up. I was driving home. I said, I just assumed he was going to be in his room, right? I go, where are you? He goes, oh, we're all shooting pool in the basement of David. And I thought, okay, I'll let you go. But I thought, the conversation ended, and I thought, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's kind of what theater is. You're brought together for this brief period of time to work as this collective force, and then it's going to be over. And those friendships linger, and the memories linger. But I think that's part of what theater has always been. It's just this moment of high energy entertainment, hopefully, that if you're lucky enough to be in the audience, to capture that, to share that,
Yeah.
and then, it's gone. So,
Right.
yeah, Walsh has been a good fit for me, to answer your question.
Yes.
God.
No,
Shut up.
There's so much more I want to ask, but I know that you're like on a
Oh,
time crunch.
no, you're fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I was in the school library recently, and they have like movies on like the back shelf,
Mhm.
and it looks like at one point like some of the shows were recorded. Is that something you'd ever consider doing, or is it too hard to get the rights to do that?
First of all, there are no rights. Every time you get a show, you are not by law permitted to videotape a show.
Gotcha.
And if they have a library of shows they've done in the past, they probably should kind of keep that under their hat. So,
Gotcha.
And boy, shows I've been in, I would love to have a video copy of them. A few I do, with the understanding people said, just to keep it to yourself.
Right.
But, I'll never see that. Like the producers, I love that show. It was a record-breaking attendance. It still holds like one of the top record-breaking attendance for whatever it is. It's the Beck Center for the Arts in Cleveland. One of the highest grossing shows they've ever done. People, I was told, when we were doing the show at intermission, people were going to the box office to buy tickets for other nights because they were afraid they were never going to be able to see it again. That's how popular it was.
That's awesome.
I would love to have a copy of that.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah. I just thought I'd ask.
No, it's a great question, and
Yeah.
like even this past weekend, people were saying it's being videotaped, isn't it? You're like, we're not supposed to do that. So
Right. Yeah.
we're not supposed to do that.
I gotcha. And how does it feel like as a dad to have both of your children involved in theater?
Well, Hallie is the full-blown musical theater major with ambitions, to go to New York to do what she can, and I told Amy, because of my background, I've always promised Hallie that I was going to be honest with her, and if I ever felt she was fooling herself as a performer, we would have that tough conversation. But everything I've seen her in, I try to sit there and I've done a pretty good job. And she's just killing it. She's focused, she's talented, she works hard, she's nice to everybody, which is important because, reputations kind of, the word gets out.
Right.
And even when I was at the Cleveland Playhouse, there were people who wouldn't get hired regardless of how good they are on stage because they are such a nightmare in rehearsal. Who wants that? Who wants that just negativity around? So she's got a really good outlook. She's ready to to take on the world, and she's really, really good. And Spence, I think he dabbles. He enjoys it.
Yeah.
But it certainly is never going to be something he wants to pursue professionally. Spencer knows the lane he needs to stay in, and he stays in it. And the things he does very well. And he's, Spencer's sort of so silly. It's hard for me to, but I was very proud of him in this show and other shows he's done because he puts in the work and he nails it. He's not afraid to ask questions. He's not afraid to be coached, directed. Some people are. As a director, I love being able to give somebody a suggestion or some direction without getting a reason, an excuse as to why. If I said, Hannah, I need to, I know we've talked about it, I have you walking in front of that chair, but now that I look at it from out in the audience, when you say the line, go behind the chair this next time. And there's people who will say, well, the reason I'm not going behind the chair is because I don't want to know the reason why. I'm telling you, as your director, it looks better if you do that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he's terrific. And what I loved about Spelling Bee is that Dr. Cooper, Dr. DiAgostino, and I sat after everyone auditioned, and it was those other two who said, well, Spencer needs to play the vice principal. It wasn't like I was pushing him, and that made me feel really good as his dad, right. That it wasn't like, how'd you think Spencer did? Like I was trying to wedge him in there.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think nepotism has reared its ugly head yet, and I hope it doesn't, because I think he's earned everything he's gotten here.
Yeah.
Hallie's at Ohio Northern, and every time I turn around, she's getting a lead role up there, and I have nothing to do with that. So, yeah, we're right now, this past weekend, like I said, with Spelling Bee and then having to go see Hallie at her capstone performance at Ohio Northern. It was a very theatrical weekend for the Heffernans. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm proud of both of them.
That's awesome. And you said the first time you heard Spencer sing was auditions.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah. I mean, what? I mean, he's very mysterious. There's a very quiet part of him that, I know it's in there, and it's just a matter of getting him to kind of, share it with the world. How's that? Oh my God. Yeah.
I think you've covered it. I guess so these are your favorites. Is there a favorite memory specifically from a certain one? Is it
Oh God.
Or if that's too broad of a question,
no,
we can skip it.
Well, this is kind of back in college, and I think I have it highlighted. I did a musical called Company.
Yes.
And Company is the story of a single guy who's got 5 married couples as his best friends, and all they want to do is get him married off. They want Bobby to be happy. The whole show's about, it's a Sondheim show, and it's pretty intense. And at the end of the show, he sings a song called "Being Alive," and it's really it's a dramatic moment where he realizes the only way he's going to experience life to its fullest is to share it with someone else, right? So it's lyrically, it's like, somebody hold me too close, somebody hurt me too deep. He's talking about wanting all these feelings that he's never had before.
Right.
So I don't know why I thought of this. Is actually it's kind of funny. So it's the end of the show. It's closing night. We've done X number of performances, and when I would sing this song, the whole stage is black. There was this little, I don't know what you call it, like a little projection, a little piece of a stage set that went out over the orchestra pit. So my character Bobby, I'm standing at the pinnacle of this little triangle that's actually built over the pit. So there's orchestra people here, It's probably like a 20-foot drop. Lights are out, little pin light spotlight, and I'm singing this, somebody hold me too close, somebody hurt me too deep. And about 2/3 through the song, I forget the lyrics. I've been singing it for weeks. My big solo number. Hannah, I can't remember what the next word is. hear a pin drop. I mean, there's 500 people in the audience crying, and it's an emotional moment. So what do? I decide. I don't think it was a conscious decision. I just did it. That my character was so emotional and so caught up in what he's singing about that he's going to start crying, okay, and he can't go on with the song. In the meantime, in my head, I'm thinking, what the hell's the next lyric? So I'm up there going, somebody hold me. And I'm playing like I'm crying, but in my head I'm thinking, my God, what's the next word? And it was probably like 5 seconds, and I remembered what I was supposed to be singing, and I got back on track, and I finished the song, and so we had like 5 more minutes of the show after that, and the show ends, and I'm off stage, and I'm pissed, closing night, and I screwed up that song, and everybody in the cast, and then, in the back hallway, your family and friends are coming by, everyone's coming to me, and they're bawling, and they said, and collectively they're all saying, when you couldn't go on anymore because you were so emotional, that you stopped singing, they're like, I can't believe that, and I'm going, yeah. Pretty good acting, huh? And I'm thinking, whoo! It was a big fake. The whole thing was nothing but I was having a panic attack. I needed to remember the words, and that's how I covered myself. Fake crying, and everyone bought in, and I was like, and whenever you mess up on stage, well, it feels like it's forever, right? And everyone in the world saw it and goes, oh my God, she screwed up. That's how it was. It was one of those moments that, like I said, it was probably less than 5 seconds, which is an eternity, right? That I covered with this fake, emotional, stupid crying that everyone just thought was just me being so caught up in the moment that I couldn't continue.
It's awesome.
I guess that's a funny story, right? Yeah, it's kind of funny. Yeah. So, yeah, awesome. That's that. So that's lesson 1 in acting, right? If all else fails, cry.
Yeah. Improv.
Right.
I think that's all I have. Do you have any hopes for continuing stuff with the new president of the university?
The new what?
Because isn't Jason retired?
Yeah, I hope whoever. Here's what I hope. All the things I do, I hope he wants to keep me here, which is number 1. Which I think that's everyone's hope.
I think it'd be stupid for him not to keep you.
But I hope that when this transition takes place, that the new president is made aware of all the good things we're doing, right? And as far as the Genesius players goes how far we've come along, and that he or she embraces that program as much as Richard has, and given us all the support he's given us in letting us do what we do. And I think Spelling Bee and things we've done in the past, Steel Magnolias, Private Lives, Dearly Departed was a riot. Even the fall play, the one I did last summer, I think he comes to everything, and he pays attention, and I think he's seen that we continue to grow. So hopefully, whoever that new president, I hope Richard has a minute to get into, like I said, his or her ear, and say this is a good thing. This is coming a long way. So that's that. That's all I'm hoping. Hey, and when you're sitting and writing whatever you have to write, text me, call me if there's something we missed. I can't imagine anything we missed.
I think you pretty well covered my questions, and this list helps too.
I'm almost embarrassed, but no, thanks for coming over. I'm happy to help.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Will I see it?
If you want to.
Yeah, send it to me. After you write, I want to find out. You're probably gonna write this asshole.
No.
He's so full of crap.
Well, I've always heard you say oh yeah, well they heard about my theater background and that's how you got involved at Walsh, and I was just wondering
no, that's
how did you?
That's what I did. Richard called me in and said, I heard you do this. Why don't you do it here? And I was like, let's talk. And so here we are.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hannah.
I'm sorry that this ran over.
No. It's only 1:30. I'm good. Okay. No, I don't want to check my phone with all those little dings going off. I'm afraid what that was all about. But no, you're more than welcome. It's fun to chat.
Yeah.
Hope you get an A.
I love writing, so.
Oh, good.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
hopefully. I love Paramore's classes.
Is it nice out?
It's nice enough that, like, walking across campus, I got, like, hot wearing a coat.
Okay.
So it's not, I mean, it's not, like,
supposed to be rainy.
ideal. Oh.
I gotta do something out in a shed with a scoreboard clock, so I'm good to go over there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, like I said, happy to help.
Yeah, and I know things have been hectic lately, so thank you for making time.
The smoke's just starting to clear, so we're in a good place.
Yeah.
All right?
And sorry about that not working out yesterday.
Oh!
The email didn't go through.
Don't you think about it twice. Happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Do you want the door closed or open?
It's a little toasty in here.
Okay. Bye. Thank you again.
See ya.